In a world filled with conflict, in a universe comprised of differences, there's one thing that absolutely everything shares in common. We all exist. Including two guys named Jack and Michael, who like to chat about that very thing over a good cup of coffee. Let's pay them a visit, shall we?
Existence Brewing.
I did not realize that they had croissants here. Yeah, I think I'll have one. Yeah. Thank you.
Croissants.
Oh, there you are. Yeah, no, I just saw these. I didn't realize they had baked goods at this place, and they looked amazing.
Is it croissant or croissant?
I like that. So how you doing?
No one ever says croissant.
No.
You probably know that you're somewhere in like Newfoundland when you hear someone say, yeah, have a croissant.
Yeah, right.
Doing well. Could deal. No pastries for me.
Are you on a diet?
Marmalade and I don't know. That's going a little too far to say that I'm on a diet. I'm watching what I put in my body, but that's nothing unusual.
But you're conscious of it.
Trying to be.
Yeah. See, and that's the difference.
Trying to be conscious of it. Yeah. I have tremendous willpower based on the average person, I would say, but sometimes even I slip up. So cake, I'm telling you, cake is the tripper.
Is it chocolate cake or just any cake?
Any kind of cake. You could literally take, like, I can't think of a food that I don't really care for. I don't like kimchi. But
yes.
I would bet if you rolled out a kimchi cake, I'd probably go, well, it is freaking cake, so I'm having this.
Well, and I would say this kimchi, this croissant is very large. Have you noticed that? Sometimes you go to bakeries and they're very small.
I think Costco started that trend, didn't they?
The big,
gigantic everything.
Giant burrito croissant.
I mean, making a strawberry the size of a human head for the purposes of Willy Wonka is one thing in the movies, but when it's a literal thing in the produce section at Costco, I think you want to think twice about just exactly how they grew that sucker.
Well, yeah, and then there's also the quantity, right? So they give you like 50 of them in a package, and you might as well just throw half of those away because there's no way you're going to ever enjoy those. And I like to save them, but then I also I balance that whole idea of, do I really want to just throw it in the freezer? Because I feel like once it goes in the freezer, especially bread products, it's just never as good.
Perhaps the secret owners and or proprietors of Costco are like Dick Van Patten and Florence Henderson, who, were famous on television in the 60s for having enormous families that were blended when that whole thing, when divorce became okay and you could actually get remarried and start, pumping somebody else, and God wouldn't have a problem with it. When we got so suburban that we were just like, oh yes, we can wife swap this week.
And what's the correlation with Costco and wife swapping?
Well, I mean, just think about it. Dick Van Patten was 8 is enough, and Florence Henderson was the mom in the Brady Bunch, and so you'd have to have a family at least that big to feed 50 human head-sized strawberries.
Okay, now he gets to the correlation.
They could be the progenitors of Costco because they're still stuck in their TV fame going, we need a store that sells 50 strawberries that are the size of a human head.
Right.
Because we're going to go through that many in the average 3 to 4 day span. I mean, I just can't keep up on them. So.
The other thing that I think is very genius about Costco is the fact that they essentially just bring in product that's on a pallet and then they leave it on the pallet. So they literally just have all this warehouse full of pallets. And I think really the only section that they really set things out in is maybe the dairy section and the bakery and the meat department. But everything else, if you notice, it all just sits on a big pallet. So you go in and you take it out And then they take all of the cardboard and they say, oh, do you want a box? Sure. Now you deal with this. So then they give you their garbage.
Yeah, I may have mentioned this before at some point in our conversations thus far, but I don't do Costco. The whole concept of paying to shop is this: I'm not going to pay you to shop at your store. The whole point of me going in there is to buy things anyway and for you to make a profit. So for me to pay you up front to go in there, I'm sorry. I'm not in the secret knock club. I don't care that much. I know
that doesn't surprise me at all. And I don't think it surprised any of our listeners that you don't do Costco.
No. And that was always my objection to Costco, among other things. But I know my ex-wife, she wanted the Costco thing because everybody went. And so she got a membership, and then I could go with her, thankfully, I guess. So I know when Costco first rolled out the big thing, well, first they really appealed to the McMansion crowd of the 90s. I know that's when they got really rip-roaring, was, well, we want to show off to all of our fancy middle-class friends that, you know, our giant house, which is made out of like pegboard underneath all of these ridiculous plastic cornices and everything that they put up to make it look like this McMansionville. We want to show them that we can buy all this food and floofy furniture and all this stuff. But I know the big thing was the samples. That's why everybody wanted to go there, was because they're literally handing out free food. And so that was always counterintuitive to me as well. It's like, so let me get this straight. You want to show off that you have the money to go shopping on a Saturday morning like a normal family and spend $850 and come home with a set of new paying golf clubs and 68 bagels, 9/10 of which nobody's going to eat, but hey, whatever's worth doing is worth overdoing, and yet you're eager to go in and get free food shoved in your mouth because I just can't afford to eat.
Right.
It's counterintuitive to me. I don't understand it. So
let me ask you this, Jack. Is there anything that you require that they only really sell at Costco that you like? Kind of like Trader Joe's, where you're like, okay, if somebody's going to Trader Joe's, I'd love to get... So what is it at Costco that you just have to have, but you don't want to buy a membership in order to obtain it?
First of all, just went to Trader Joe's for the first time in years and picked up some of their trail mix. So I will, and I'll expect my check in the mail from the folks at Trader's too for pumping their tires on the podcast. They do have the best trail mix.
Yeah, I remember you eat that a lot.
I bought like 6 bags of it, and I bought 5 of the wrong kind. Even the wrong kind is still good, but the one bag I bought was the stuff I actually used to get. Help me to check the label before I actually buy anything. But
well, let's go back to Costco. Is there anything at Costco?
Well, so anyway, that's the Trader Joe's. But the thing is it's been so long since I've been to Costco. The only thing that sticks out in my mind actually brings up another little like irritation about Costco. And that was the only thing I remember ever getting from Costco that was like truly to die for were these waffles. They had these pre-made waffles, and they were dipped in chocolate. So it wasn't like they weren't Eggos. You didn't heat them up in the toaster. They were just like exorbitant, decadent, dipped in chocolate. Here, have a dipped in chocolate waffle because it's 3 a.m. and my parents shop at Costco and I live on the hill kind of thing. So whereas regular kids are probably scouting for the stale toastettes that may be left over in the back or something like that, I'm having this chocolate gourmet Belgian dipped waffle thing. So those were damn good. But the problem is that they had them once, and then every time we'd go back after that, they never had them again. And I haven't been to Costco in, like I said, 10 years or something, and I don't intend to go back anytime soon. So I don't think they've probably ever had them again. So that was one of the other deficiencies about Costco is irregularity of product. They could find something spectacular, and then they wouldn't have it anymore after they were out.
You got to grab
That's kind of the grocery outlet problem. When Grocery Outlet gets a pallet of something amazing that nobody wanted, and you're like, oh, my God, this is delicious, and they don't have it. Perfect example. In fact, I have some. I had some with me. I just was eating them.
Was it the marmalade or?
No, that's the grapefruit marmalade that was from Trader Joe's. No, we found them at Grocery Outlet in Omak, Washington. Like, to most people, it's Tehellangone. It's a small town up north. But they have these, like, I guess they're like yam. They're not yams. What are they? They're like purple sweet potato chips or something like that.
I've seen those.
They're delicious, and they're have all this Korean writing on them, and they're called No Brand. And they literally, and No Brand, of course, it's trademarked, No Brand. But the whole idea behind No Brand, you read it and it says, we believe in not branding our stuff.
Oh, that's interesting.
Because we don't want to be like Cheetos or Frito-Lay. We're better than that. And yet I looked, and sure enough, No Brand itself is trademarked.
Of course.
So it's like,
it's
that's
intellectual.
A little counterintuitive.
It's intellectual property of some company, but we just don't know the name of them.
Yeah, those are damn good though. And they were like 99 cents a tube. And I got to be careful with those because like 5 of them are 200 calories and I'm trying to watch my waistline. I'm getting, I'm in my 50s now. And so weight isn't coming off as easily as it used to. So.
Yeah, you got to watch it.
Well, I want to because I don't feel good when I get, it's not, well, I can't say it's not entirely not a vanity thing, but it's also at least as much and I don't feel good when I'm this weight or more sort of thing. So I want it off because the human body is not supposed to be, it's only supposed to be so large, I think.
Yeah. Well, just like the croissants, they're only supposed to be so large.
Yeah, and a Costco croissant, you can actually put, you can have wheels, you can have rims put on it over in the shop portion of the thing and drive it out of there. I've seen them before. They're the size of a small Aston Martin, they're the size of a Triumph Spitfire. The croissants. We
used to work with somebody, you and I did, that used to get really upset when we would talk about baked goods. She was an amazing baker. I think you know who I'm talking about. And I remember she insisted on the French pronunciation of the macaron. And every time she would say macaron, I would say, oh yeah, macaroons. And her face really was weird. Just like, you can't say that. It has to be macaron.
It's really weird that you'd bring that up. Today is actually National Macaroon Day. I shit you not.
And we call them macaroons.
And maybe that's where it came from because it drives me crazy too. Those little beautiful French cookies that have the filling in them that come in 10,000 flavors and colors are not called macaroons. Those are coconut little things. They are macarons. You don't have to macaron. That's not necessary for me, but they are macarons, in fact. And I believe, isn't the Prime Minister of France actually, his name is Macron right now, the guy that actually runs the whole show?
Yeah.
Let me tell you a quick story about her.
He's the leader of the Macrons.
Because I want a little internet jewel in my crown for this. So the first season that I met who you're referring to, she entered an apple pie contest in a small town. Mm-hmm. Came in dead last.
Oh, what?
I went down and had a slice and bought a slice. They had this thing, buy a slice, and it went back to this farmer's market thing. And then you voted for your favorite. So, I was nice and I voted for them to be the winner, but they got last place. Then the next season, I suggested to this person, you need to put bourbon in your apple pie recipe. And they were like, ooh, I've never thought of that. That's not a bad idea. So top shelf, medium shelf bourbon at least went into this apple pie. Next year, first place. First freaking place. And what I told them was, look, you probably can't even taste it. It probably doesn't do much to the filling at all. But the fact subconsciously that there's alcohol involved shoots it right to the top.
There you go.
Of anybody's list.
Jack Hansen, ladies and gentlemen, he is the marketer extraordinaire. Yeah, no, you're very right. If you say bourbon balls,
an apple pie contest.
Very nice. If you say bourbon cheesecake or whatever it might be, bourbon chili. You're right. It definitely will shoot all the way to the top. And so that's another one of those $1 million ideas that we just gave somebody.
But it's true. The alcohol, I know it burns off in flambés and baked Alaskas and stuff like that. But, what are you going to do? It brings to mind this whole thing about sweets, though, about when you dream of sweets. Like when you have dreams about cupcakes. But my girlfriend just had a dream about sweets, and it seems like I had one not too long ago. And then when we were first getting to know each other, she had a dream about cupcakes. I recall that she told me, and I was telling her about what dreams of sweet things mean. And typically when you dream about eating cupcakes, or ice cream is a big one, people will often, I remember one time I had a dream that I was in a stadium full of people, and we were all eating ice cream and just loving it. And generally it means what you might think it means. In most dream interpretation, it means that it's about things that are pleasing to you. It's representative of something that is pleasurable, or that's a pleasurable sensation or a pleasurable experience. So, of course, with dreams, we have so much hyperbole and metaphor and, all this symbolism that we have to cut through, because it's rarely just right in front of our face, because whatever gives us our dreams, be it our primal subconscious or our physiology or the angels or the dream Sandman or whoever it is, they like to play games with us. And so we have to cut through all this euphemistic imagery, I guess, for one way to put it. But anyway, that's what it's supposed to mean. And so I look forward to those kinds of dreams. The only thing is whenever I have a dream where I'm eating something like that, I want it. I wake up and it's like, okay, well, I was just eating cake. Now I want some damn cake. I can't just have subconscious cake. What the hell is that?
Yeah.
I want real cake.
So now in your dream, because I'm
corporeal, for God's sake.
I've never had a dream where I dreamt about food that I can recall. So now are you able to actually taste it, or is it just the act of eating a cupcake or the act of eating a giant cupcake or whatever it might be?
The Costco cupcake dream, right. The one that's like the size of your house. Like you think you're pulling up and you think that it's like a small bank or a condominium, and it actually turns out to be a Costco cupcake, and you're walking into the damn thing.
It's like a coffee shop.
It's like those Polly Pocket things that my nieces were all about at one time, where the whole downtown looks like Candyland.
Yeah.
So I love that shit.
There's a barista in there, and
I used to illustrate kids' books for a living, no shit, and I actually drew a book that had stuff like that in it once. It was a lot of fun to illustrate. Anyway, I mean, people do have other sensations in their dreams, but generally speaking, it's just symbolic if you see it. I mean, so if you taste it, I guess that's a one-up. You found a Mario coin. But the idea is that you're seeing it. It's because it's symbolic of something that's pleasurable to you. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that the dream always portends of something that we want, because it could be symbolic of a vice that we have. It depends on the moodiness of the dreams. It depends on the air of the dream, and then, of course, what happens in it. The one thing about dream interpretation that I've always, because I've studied it for a lifetime, just about since I was a kid, and there's a lot of different kinds. But the one thing that when I talk to people about it and they're intrigued and they say, well, tell me what this means, tell me what that means, the most important thing is, how did it feel to you? What did it mean to you? Because if you wake up with your own meaning of it, then perfect. Then you're on your way. So you have to kind of interpret for yourself based on that feeling that you get, that ineffable sense of, okay, this is how I'm feeling in this dream, no matter what's happening. And same for spirit animals, which we'll talk about at some point. But, if you raise sheep for a living, then, dreaming of sheep is going to mean something completely different to you than it is to the person who does not raise sheep, like yours truly. If I dream of a sheep, or have a poignant dream about a sheep or sheeps, then I'm going to wake up and go, holy shit, there was a bunch of sheep in my dream just now. I got to look this up and see what it means. Whereas the shepherd, the literal shepherd, is going to wake up and go, oh, that's a work dream. So context is important too.
Totally. We've all had those dreams where, when we're at a radio station and we're on the air and we can't find the right button, or we're looking around and we just can't quite read the screen. I mean, there's always like this. For me, it was always some kind of a handicap that I couldn't hear anything, or I couldn't see anything, or I didn't know if I was on the air or not. It was just this like crazy dream.
Yeah, but you had that dream because you were in broadcast media for 25 years or so.
Just like the shepherd.
I've been in broadcast. Yeah, and I've been in broadcast media for about a quarter of a century now myself. And I have those dreams quite frequently too. And there's something going awry at the station, or a station that you're working at, or on rare occasions you're on fire. Something's working really well and you're getting a lot of calls, or the phones are lighting up, or there's a great song playing in the background and everybody loves it. Or I had a Today Show dream, I remember one time, that was kind of work-ish, I suppose, because where I work now, and it's funny because this was before I worked there. I've worked there twice at the same station under different ownership here where we live, but it's the same building when I went back to work. But I actually had this dream before I went back to work there, kind of in between, in the interim. There's these big glass windows that are out front that look out onto the sidewalk. And you know how when they show those lemmings that like go to New York for the purposes of friggin' looking through the windows at the Today Show?
Right.
It's like you're in New York City, literally 1,000,000,001 things to do that are culturally stimulating, and you're going to go stand with a stupid sign about hours while they film the thing, hoping those people better be paid. Those people had better be paid. They better, except I know better. They're real people that come from Alabama and parts that are the same. I had a dream like that, though. I had a dream where these big glass windows that are floor to ceiling, where the studio is that I work in, there were people out there. There weren't as many, but there was like a crowd out there, and they were holding up signs and jumping, and I was freaked, man. I was like, I don't like this. I don't want those people out there where I'm trying to do my thing. We got to draw the shades or do something, because I'm not happy. And it was nighttime, so it was like 3 a.m, and I was getting ready for my morning show.
See, I have a theory about that, and I've never been to Rockefeller Center. I've never seen the studios. I've never even Googled it. But every time I see it on TV and the way that the people are looking in the window, I don't think it's a real window.
No, especially since it's the magic of television, because they do all kinds of tricks.
I think what they do is they have some monitors at a window somewhere, and then there's a camera that is actually shooting through the glass and actually capturing people looking through at the monitor. And they don't see because of security reasons or whatever. And then that way, the producers, if there's an issue with a splasher or whatever, they can just dump the video.
Back in the days when Matt Lauer was on the show, if they had a flasher, he would flash them back, actually. So
that was their secret weapon.
I don't know anything about celebrity crap. Didn't he get in trouble for like being a groper or something?
He did. He had a button in his office that would lock the door.
God, sorry. Again, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it was very odd. And he would bring women in to his office, and then he would lock the door by pushing this button. And it was probably installed for good reasons, and then
security
purposes. And then Matt Lauer was like, "Ooh, I can use this to my advantage."
Not really a good sign for your Riz. Riz is one of those great Gen Z words that I picked up from my girlfriend. It means that you have the ability to charm the whatever sex you prefer. Like you're charming, and you're kind of debonair. Not really a good sign for your personal Riz load when you have to lock someone in the room to try to get to know them better. Try that on a date in the car.
Yeah, and it's not good if you're a journalist and you're, the voice of integrity. That doesn't look good on your resume either.
Animals, again, spirit animals and animal appearances in dreams are super, kind of linked together. Animal activity in dreams is important. And, so there are some basics about dreams. And I know we were kind of wanting to dissect that. So
yeah,
a good place to start, because this just came up the other day. I'm kind of a tornado buff. And so I've been watching all these tornado videos on
Extreme
YouTube.
weather, yeah.
And I don't know how it came up, but it seems like my girlfriend was talking about having a dream about wind or tornado dreams. And she was saying, I don't think I've ever really had tornado dreams. And I've had a number of tornado dreams. And so it got me to thinking, and we were talking about this, that wind in dreams, even if it's not tornadic or cyclonic wind, even if it's just wind, is just about always change. So if you dream about the wind blowing things over in your yard, you go outside and there is this massive tornado and things are blowing around, or anytime there's wind involved, it's always indicative of change that's either unfolding as you speak in your waking life, change that is incumbent, or change that is perhaps in some way come and gone if it fits, again, the mood of the dream.
Mm-hmm.
And then water. When we get to water, when we dream about any water at all, standing water, I'm, in a lake, I'm in a river, I'm swimming, I'm drowning. Yeah. Sharks, certainly, that adds a different element. That's kind of like sprinkles on a cake, but, it gets sort of, because the shark isn't necessarily in water if you dream about a sand shark or you dream about an astral shark, or, there's other kinds of dream sharks out there, Michael. So, but if you dream about water, if you dream about lakes, I'm swimming, I'm drowning, I'm floating, or it's rain, or even snow, blizzard, flood, tsunami, all of that, that's emotion. Anytime you dream about water, it's just about always indicative of emotion. So 2 real basic elements, things that people dream about all the time, wind and water, whether it's elemental, based on like it's raining or something like that, precipitating, or it's actually like a lake or a river, you're dreaming about emotion. So again, it's about typically your emotions, but it doesn't have to be. So you have to kind of piece together the parts from there. But that's usually what that component means in a dream. So great place to start for people that are sort of looking to do basic dream interpretation. There's 2 tips for you.
Yeah, and wouldn't it be cool if you could actually like recall your dreams? Not that you could remember them, but that you could actually like play them back, like YouTube.
I think some people can, Michael. I mean, you don't seem to be you were telling me that you don't remember or haven't been recalling a lot of your dreams of late.
No.
I don't remember all of mine, but I remember some of them. But I do know there's this strange thing that will happen to me on occasion. I will have a dream, and then in the immediacy of waking after the dream, I will not remember it. I will try. And it's funny because the more that I try, it's kind of like trying to remember a name or a number or remember a word's meaning.
It gets harder and harder.
Like the harder you try, the more it slips away. And it seems to be doubly the case for dreams for whatever reason. The more I try to latch on to, oh, this is what was happening, it's gone. But oddly enough, it can be months, it can be years later, I'll remember it suddenly. And usually it's in a setting where it applies too. It's almost like deja dream. It's almost like, hey, wait a minute, I dreamt this, or now I remember the link between the dream that I had 2 years ago and couldn't remember right away. Now I'm remembering it because I'm in the space that it was trying to tell me about or that it's related to. Really cool stuff. I mean, and we can take this a step much further because I think I was talking about how, aside from just dreaming, I feel like I've been astral projecting in the last year or so, like literally visiting these parallel dimensions or universes or whatever they are, because I wake up just exhausted and I'm seeing different incarnations of myself, and they're current, they're present, they're not past lives, they're not regressive in that sense. They're like happening, unfolding in a different time and space, and it's really cool, but it also just exhausts me. And I know that therefore, to me, the feeling is not like waking up from a dream. The feeling is like getting back after you've had 3 layovers on a trip from Chicago, and you're finally home at 2:00 in the morning. It's like that. Yeah,
that is interesting. And, you know, psychiatrists, scientists, they are really kind of puzzled about what really causes them or what, you know, what would that dream mean? And I'm sure there are psychiatrists that like to delve into that.
Well, psychology is one aspect of dream interpretation. Of course, Father Freud pretty much coined everything. You know, I mean, Mr. Chocolate Cigar himself, or Exploding Cigar. He was just into cigars in general. I'm not sure if he smoked them, but I'm sure he did. All good professors did back then. What am I saying? So psychological dream interpretation is only one avenue. You then have traditional dream interpretation, which is really vague or general, but that's sort of a blending of a lot of different cultures and even mythologies, if you will, that, you know, sort of span the years. So you could have a tiny couple of little bits of Egyptian in there. You could get a little bit of Far Eastern, you know, like Buddhist kind of stuff, or Tao even. And then you could dribble in some Western culture, some Occidental stuff. There's also the Arab world is big into dream interpretation. There's Muslim dream interpretation. Pretty much every world theology that's large enough has its own catalog of dreams and what they're supposed to represent. And very often it's based on the faith and a lot of things that its God or pantheon of gods is trying to convey to you. But it's still very interesting. So again, because if you're a person of the Muslim faith, then you're probably going to, I would guess, at least half root yourself in what Muslim dream interpretation tells you, because you are of that philosophy, you are of that theology. Yeah. But I would think that no matter what, there's probably a good thing to bring in a little bit from the outside realm as well. You have to remember this too, about some, ancient is a strong word, but about some dream interpretations that, you know, like again, ancient Egyptian or, you know, the older ones, they didn't, well, maybe they did, because there's actually like supposed to be carvings of helicopters and stuff like on the temple walls of some of these pyramids and things that they've covered up over the years. But from what we know, they didn't have the telephone. They didn't have the laptop computer. They didn't have. So when those things show up in your dream, you have to update it, you know, so that, because again, you're dreaming about something that there was no interpretation for 2,000 years ago, because those things hadn't been invented yet. So you have to kind of keep up. It has to be a living catalog of what this may mean. And that's where traditional dream interpretation comes in, because it'll invite those elements in. And then people who are again, practicing psychologists and, work with dreams from that stance, from a scientific standpoint, and people who are metaphysicists and they get into the spiritual side of things and say, no, a computer could mean that. It's a blending of those things. So if you're looking to interpret a dream, I would explore more than one definition on Google, because most people are just going to Google their dreams, and that's great. But look at more than one avenue of interpretation, for God's sake. And then mostly, again, anchor in what it is that you feel like it means. You may be a little puzzled, but try to go to the feeling of what it meant to you.
Yeah.
Because that's really where your answer lies.
I really like that. I mean, I've never heard anybody say that, but I really like that as an approach, because I really think that you are the only person, because you've created the dream. You are the one who dreamt it. And so what does that mean to you? Was that something that scared you? Was that something that you enjoyed? What was it? And yeah, I think that's a really good element of it. And, the other thing that I was actually thinking about this the other day when you had brought up dreams was it really is something that for the continuum of our history as a human race, everybody dreams.
We're supposed to, or we're supposed to go insane, I guess, if we don't dream. And we all have, the nice thing about dreams, too, is that while they are, as you mentioned, it's your dream, you created it. And that's one theory, that you do create your own subconscious thoughts, or you do create your own dream space. It's also theorized that these dreams are sometimes like I've been experiencing, where it's a looking glass to someplace else. Mm-hmm. It could be that there is a spiritual realm and your guardians or angels or guides are giving you these messages. Perhaps there is a God that's giving you these messages. So there's a lot of theories on where they come from, and it's fascinating to peruse, but I don't think we're ever going to, get to an empirical answer. So we have to stop at some point. But, what you're saying about, having, dreams and, giving it, kind of this continuum of humanity. That's a neat thing to keep in mind about dreams, too, is that even though no matter where they come from, the dreams are tailored for our individual experience here. They're truly, it's a Michael dream or it's a Jack dream specifically. There's also the melding of every human experience that's ever occurred in the history of time, in the history of all things, and perhaps in the history of other incarnations, too. And that all is connected to us at all times. So we have that going for us. As Carl would have said, so we got that going for us, which is nice, because perhaps we can borrow from, I don't want to say the mistakes, but the experiences from some of perhaps the shortfalls or shortcomings or some of the triumphs that have happened to someone that's going through the same thing or a similar thing from history. And we don't even know them, but in the dream space, they can come and give us a nudge and say, hey, here's what we think that you should do that would be in your best interest to be a progressive soul energetically in this experience. So that's a really neat point that you bring up about the continuum of humanity, because that's a huge melting pot when you enter that realm. And even though the dream is specific to you, it also can be, it's specific to all souls. It's specific to all things, which means it's not very specific at all, but you're using that to maybe try and help yourself. I'm
glad you brought up the spiritual side of it, because I've noticed recently that I don't remember the dreams that I have while I'm asleep, but there are often times in the last probably 3 years that I will immediately start thinking about somebody. It might be a loved one, it might be whatever. And then, later on, I'll find out that either they were in a car accident or they were hospitalized, or I actually had a thought a few years ago about a family member, and then I found out that he had actually died of a heart attack. And it was the craziest thing, because this wasn't somebody who was like my uncle. This was kind of a removed family member. And the thought that I would even be thinking about them, it really gave my family member that I explained this to goosebumps, because they were like, wow, I mean, why would you have ever even thought of, and that's it. Like, I wouldn't have. And so I do like to think that there is something that is trying to communicate with us. And sometimes even during our waking hours, there are things that subconsciously will poke up into our into our consciousness, and then it kind of guides us into a, hey, maybe I should call this person, or that kind of a thing.
Yeah. Then we kind of get into the question, is it a dream, or is it what might be termed as a visitation? Are you actually interacting with the energy that was the embodiment of this person in a corporeal sense who was alive? I mean, are they visiting you in some way? And some would say, what's the difference? And again, the conscious side of things, our waking life, really in some ways, in a lot of ways, I think, is the wall that precludes us from being perhaps overly in touch. I mean, that's the thing that I think is part of the spiritual business too, and about becoming enlightened and awakened, is we have to remember that we've agreed to take on this experience, and this experience is what it is. It's three-dimensional, it's crude, it's bloody, it's messy, it's dirty. It's all those things that the other side isn't known for, isn't well adapted to being. But that's our job in this space. We're in this space. So I don't know that it's ever, maybe for some, again, I can't ever speak for every soul, maybe for some yogis or, people that are real, astral travelers or whatever, it's their job to sort of be more in the other space than in this one. Like they say about Pisces people, 1 foot in this world, 1 foot in the other, but you still have 1 foot in this world. And that's where you need to stay grounded, because this is the experience. So the idea, I think, is to create some form of conduit between that side and this side, so that side is aiding you, it's guiding you along within this experience, and you're not totally shut out to it, but you're also not so absorbed in the metaphysical or in the ether or the spiritual realm or whatever you want to call it, that you've lost all real need for being in this space. Because again, you wouldn't have incarnated here if you didn't have something that you wanted to do here. So I would suggest being here, but having that conduit open would be a fantastic idea. And dreams are, I would think, just about the zenith of ways that we do that in a natural way. I mean, I would think that that's one of the number one ways, because we all have to sleep in order to survive. We all of us sleep. Yeah. And so all of us dream. And so that portal, it's been theorized, that's when that opens up or becomes more pronounced, is when we are in our sleep state, what the coneheads would call SLAR phase, which I just love.
So that was the other thing I was going to say too, was that, if you don't even believe in dream interpretation or whatever it might be, hey, run with it. That's your belief, whatever it is. But I do feel like sometimes having these experiences are also just an experience of living. And I think that it's important that we're in tune with our senses. It's just like our sense of smell. It's just like our sense of taste, our sense of hearing. Having this opportunity to tap into something that's metaphysical and getting information, whether it's a download or whether it's, like you like to say, I jacked that from the Jack Hansen playbook. But I think that is an important thing to remember is, there might not be any interpretation of it, but at the same time, it's a sense. It is something that you're experiencing. And I think that to some degree, I know that when I've had those things pop up in my purview, I then kind of go, okay, well, what is that person trying to tell me?
Yeah, and I think the other thing that I've discovered, at least about myself, is that even though everything can mean something, and we'll get more into this when we talk about symbolism, we talk about signs, and we talk about synchronicity. But even though everything can mean something, doesn't mean that it always does. Yeah, I definitely have dreams where I feel like it's just a dump. It's literally just, okay, it's garbage in, garbage out. You are literally draining the tank of all this crap that you've watched on YouTube or HBO, right, or that you've listened to on your car stereo. These are all of the parts. And even though in the spiritual realm, nothing would seem to be worthy of being totally detritus, it's like everything has some kind of merit. let's face it, not everything has a nutritional value for our spiritual side. And so therefore I have had plenty of dreams consistently where, like I said, it's like a subconscious bowel movement. It's just a dump. You're just literally you're purging some of this garbage that's been put in that you don't need, because your brain, and more importantly, whatever it is that ties it to your subconscious and therefore to that vacuum of the metaphysical, like we're talking about, that spiritual realm, whatever that is a perfect machine in every sense of the word. And so it knows instinctively, and therefore you know instinctively exactly what you need in there and what you don't. Mm-hmm. And I've often wondered if that's not the secret in some way to trying to help people who've had traumatic experiences, to try to help people who have PTSD and things of that nature come through the other side and live a life that isn't so tortured, where they're not haunted in a way that's so reactive to the things that they've seen or experienced in this life that are traumatic.
Yeah.
Because think about it. I mean, I don't know. For me, at least, I've had plenty of dreams where it's like, it was an amalgam of everything I've seen on TV in the last 20 days that was absolutely worthless. Mm-hmm. And my brain just condensed it together, created some bizarre little, what's seemingly like a 7-minute film strip, and dumps it, and it's gone. And I wake up going, I wonder what that was all about. And the answer, nothing. That was about you purging. That was about your subconscious saying, we don't need this. We're getting rid of it. But you're going to be in some ways aware, I guess, that it's being gotten rid of. It's like watching the sewage drain out of your RV, right?
Yeah.
It's the same kind of thing.
Well, and I think that's why I like to think of dreams also as just another sense. You know, it's like your sixth sense, and it is a way for you to then experience something, and there's not necessarily, you know, it's just like smelling a flower, it's just like hearing something, whatever it might be. And the other thing that I like to think about too is, you know, we always in kind of the ghost world, I can't help. But, you know, in the ghosts circles, they talk a lot of times about, you know, supernatural things that we experience. The other thing I always like to think too is maybe the dream world is almost kind of like our way of connecting with the other side. And and they're over there, and we're now visiting them, and there might be a connection there. I know that a lot of times it might be, I'll tell you a quick story. I was doing a lot of genealogy research about my grandfather, who was in World War II. And I never really had an opportunity to hear his stories or what his experience was, because two things. I was young, and he, I don't think, really wanted to tell me about his experiences, because I think in a way he was kind of haunted by them. And the things that he experienced in that time were not things that he really enjoyed. So he passed away quite a few years ago, and I was married at the time. And my uncle gave me a stack of letters that he had written to his sister during World War II. And so one of the things that I did is I put them into a collection of you know, where he was at which date in Europe. And because of security reasons, he couldn't actually say what he was doing. But that was kind of a way for me to connect with my grandfather, because I never really had an opportunity to talk to him about his experience. Believe it or not, while I was doing that project, I was having some amazing dreams. And they weren't just dreams per se, they were interactions with him. And I really do feel like that was his way of encouraging me to continue on with the project. And just kind of in a way say to me, like, hey, I know what you're doing and I really appreciate it. And so I ended up putting this book together and giving it to my aunts and my mom, because they didn't even know some of these things. And I had not only successfully identified what unit he was in during World War II, but I was able to kind of provide a narrative with other events that were happening during that time. So I used his story as a way to learn more about World War II. And that is something that, I don't know if you've seen my collection of books, but it is something that I really enjoy, and I've enjoyed reading and understanding it. Now, it is also one of those subject matters that you almost kind of have to unplug and just say, okay, this is too much. I've spent way too much time on this, and I need a break from this for a minute. But anyway, I wanted to share that because I do feel like, in a way, it was him communicating to me, and I think that there's a connection there sometimes.
I have no doubt that's amazing. I mean, I can't say that I have had an experience that's similar with a loved one who's passed. Certainly, there's been sporadic visitations. I have a dog that I was very close to, and she won't visit very often, the little shit, because she knows that, she's busy doing other things over the Rainbow Bridge or whatever, happens to our energy. But every so often she'll pop up in a dream, and I'm always just so glad to see her. It's just like, it's kind of sad, I suppose. My mom would be on the list, but of all the people, of all the living things that I have known in my life and lost, if it came down to that AI moment, in the movie, with Steven Spielberg, your batteries are literally going to expire and you won't have a memory of any of this. You're going to get wiped. You can spend one last day with anybody you want. Who's it going to be? That dog might win. I'm sorry, Mom.
Oh, wow.
But, my little dog might win. I said it'd be a toss-up because I love my mom an awful lot, too.
What kind of dog was it?
Oh, she was a little Pembroke Welsh Corgi. And anybody that knows Corgi dogs knows that they're all gremlins. We called her the little gremlin because they're just always up to something. But they're not nefarious in any way. They're just little sprites, and they're just having fun with us. And they've got the greatest sense of humor. So her and I were kindred spirits. And like I said, she doesn't make appearances too often. And when she does, and I see her, and she sees that I'm just marveling at her presence, I'm like, oh, Willow, it's you. You're there. She kind of gives me this look like, thought I'd come by. See ya. And then she's gone. She trots through.
Wow.
She's gone. So the little shit visits me once in a while in a dream.
That's so cool.
Those interactions you had, that's, I mean, the one thing that you have going for you there, I mean, again, not that you couldn't always say this, but I think your big sign is the timing. I mean, your big sign there that there's more going on here than just some kind of subconscious coincidence or whatever. The guy with the pipe that's got the 17 diplomas on the wall that says he knows everything is going to tell you, and he absolutely doesn't know shit about
the
shit.
Credentials.
He's blocking the latest block of the block that he came in with to block. Those debunker type people just drive me crazy. They have to know everything, and it's ridiculous. But the timing, to me, is what says it all with your experience there. I mean, that's letting you know that things are lined up. Again, things are synchronistic at that moment.
Yeah. Well, and I have actually had instances where, and again, I don't know if it is something where I like to think that it is, but somebody will pass away, and maybe they weren't a relative, but they were somebody who meant a lot in my life, and it was somebody that I respected, and I would get visited by them quite frequently in dreams, not only in dreams, but in waking hours as well. And, these thoughts of, hey, I'm thinking about you, or maybe it was a moment where something is coinciding where we used to do that. And then it's kind of like a reminder that, hey, I'm reminded of you. You and I worked for somebody. The owner of our radio station, she was an environmentalist, and it's interesting because to this day, I cannot smell a pine tree without thinking of her. Oh, yeah.
There's a wonderful word that psychology has for that, and I'm not remembering it, but I might before we're finished here. But yeah, all those things are connected to each other, and there's a reason why. I mean, so again, it's sort of like the human dots, again, the physiological dots, the ones that we can cut up and dissect and pull apart and test again and come up with an answer for, those seem to be the easier parts. But for whatever reason, the ones that are more innate to our nature, that are bigger than that are capable of so much more, those are the ones that we have sadly an easier time disconnecting with. And so bearing just a contemplation about it is enough in some ways, I think, a lot of times to reconnect all of those senses with each other, all of those psychic surfaces with each other by just contemplating them. You don't even really have to think about them. You just have to acknowledge them and they light up. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's, again, one of the reasons why I think one of the last times we got together, we talked about the importance of just thinking about these things. The contemplation of these things is a fundamental part of our being. And when we're doing that, we're lighting up like a star in the sky. But when we're not, our light is dim. And so part of our place, at least, is to contemplate our place. And when we do that, we light the way for ourselves and others. So just a couple more, you mentioned certainly I've had dreams about people that I've lost that have been close to me that were, more just in my immediate circle and those of, the people that were around me. Mm-hmm. But I did I've had one celebrity visit shortly after they died. And that was a really interesting dream. That was from Robin Williams, of all people. And I can't say that, I've been compared to Robin Williams a great deal, but I would say our humor is somewhat similar. And I've had plenty of people that say, yeah, you kind of remind me a little bit of him in some ways. And it's funny because when I saw him, he had his books with him. He was in the hallway at school. It was a generic school with generic lockers and everything was pedestrian. It looked like any school hallway that you would see from like the 1960s. Yeah. And I saw him going into class and he turned around and looked at me and he had that look on his face like, well, shit, here we are again. And I was like, yep, Robin's going back to learn again. And so see, when you learn about, or when you dream about school, you're dreaming about lessons. You're dreaming, if you're the student, it goes without saying, you're dreaming about a lesson that needs to be learned, that you are currently learning, one you have learned. When you're dreaming about teaching, instructing, you're talking about just that. You're talking about showing someone. You're in a position to be able to show someone or teach someone or instruct someone. So it's a common dream, and it's interesting that he showed up in it because I woke up and what it said to me was, of course, he'd committed suicide. And there are, of course, varying degrees of belief about what happens to a person when they do that to themselves in waking life. The general spiritual thought, without getting into all of the theologies, is that you have some tidying up to do, and you'll be doing this again because you sort of gave up on it. And so we're going to send you back to do this again, and you're going to take another run. And that's really what it said to me, was he had gotten a few things. He liked a few things that had happened. He didn't like a few things that had happened. And so he was coming back to try again. Just a couple more that I wanted to share before we finish, because they're such common dreams and people have them all the time. They may not know what they mean, or may have never had a spark of curiosity to look it up until, maybe we helped them with that today. Naked dreams. We've all had naked dreams. I'm naked at work. I'm naked in class. I'm naked in the middle of the street. Naked. Naked typically means that you are feeling in some way vulnerable or exposed. And again, pretty easy literal translation, but those are most naked dreams. I'm naked in class. I go to school. I'm the teacher, and I literally teach at a school, something like that, and I'm naked in front of the class. I'm feeling vulnerable, or I'm feeling exposed in some way. So that's the meaning of naked. There is one exception. I've had one dream in my life where I've been sky-clad, and to be sky-clad means that you are naked underneath the stars at night. And I've never had a chance to do that, probably since I was a little boy in the backyard running around naked and didn't care. So as a man, I've never been naked outside under the stars at night that I can recall. So very cool dream, and it was very meaningful to me at the time because it's a very powerful symbol of your connectivity to everything, that you are basically feeling your cosmic oats. You are feeling connected to the stars and to everything that lights us up and warms us up. Yeah. And you are grounded to where you are at the moment on the earth in this place. So sky-clad dreams are awesome. And I've only had one, and I'd love to have another, but I guess I have to
I think you may need to go find a park somewhere and recreate that moment with yourself at some point in your life, because that does keep coming back. I think we talked about it in the grounding episode.
I think so too. And they can put that on my arrest sheet too. It'll just say, charged with being sky-clad in public. That works just fine. teeth falling out and hair falling out real quick. That's another one. Everybody has those dreams. I dreamt my teeth, and they're awful. I mean, I used to dream my teeth were falling out all the time. So, very rarely, I think, is it pointing to severe gingivitis or gum disease. Your teeth are probably not going to fall out. It's not time to check in with the orthodontist or the dentist just yet. What those are typically revealing are insecurities. You are feeling insecure about a particular circumstance or situation in your waking life, and it needs to be addressed. Otherwise, you will have more dreams about your teeth or hair falling out, and it will be unpleasant. So the idea is to stop the unpleasantness in your subconscious mind by addressing the fact that, hey, I got to face up to this. I'm feeling insecure. Let's do something about it. So anyway, and wanted to put the call out to anybody out there that listens to the podcast, or even just this particular one, to share their dreams with us. I think that would be fantastic if they would, if our followers, our listeners would share some of their dreams with us. If they'd be kind enough to do that, then we could have an opportunity to have a look at them. And maybe there's something that you've been, like I said, I'm not a pro. I can't say I've ever taken money for this. I know to be a pro, you have to have all these accreditations and have this business license, all this stuff. Don't have that, but I've been doing this kind of stuff for years, and I've made a few people pretty happy with what I've been able to interpret for them. So I'd love to give it a run for our listeners. If they want to get in your dreams, share them, and we'll keep sharing some of ours, even the really weird ones.
Yeah.
About being naked with that bowl of Jell-O. I stole that from Real Genius, but
so if you do have an interesting dream, or maybe it's not an interesting dream, and you want somebody to share it with us. We'll take a look at it.
Contact at existencebrewing.com.
Wonderful.
That's the place.
I did think it was interesting. One of the stats that I ran across was that blind people dream more than with other sensory components compared to people with sight.
That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
That almost doesn't surprise me in some ways, because it feels to me like perhaps they're compensating for a lack of what they lack in, corporeal abilities, that they actually would dream more because, after all, they are sightless, or perhaps, somebody's deaf, or...
Mm-hmm. And I think it makes sense too, like you said, because, their sensory maybe is heightened more than people who can see. And so therefore they're just, that part of their body is more active.
You want to see the cinematic, fictitious pinnacle of that theory? Watch a movie with Rutger Hauer called Blind Fury.
Oh, I can only imagine.
You ever seen that?
No.
It's a must watch. Anybody that wants to be an 80s child and either isn't or lived through the era and hasn't seen that has got to see that movie.
Okay, tell us the plot.
Well, he basically it's sort of a revenge movie. He takes vengeance on some really bad guys who did a bad thing to
kind of like a Steven Seagal
really
movie.
Nice people. Little bit. Steven Seagal, or you go back, maybe not quite as, it's not Death Wish stuff. It's not like, hey, it's time for you to meet your mate. I mean, that kind of thing. Maybe more Clint Eastwood, but sorry, that was my best Bronson on the fly. But no, it's great. He's blind, but he's like this incredible swordsman, and he basically, this blind guy takes down armies and they did a great job with it because they had fun with it. As so many 80s movies did, it was just pure entertainment. It was just the right amount of camp, but it was also just the right amount of other stuff to sort of pull you along and say, well, when you found yourself going, oh, this is ridiculous, but it could happen with a guy like that. And that to me is like a perfect movie. Perfect movie that's completely outlandish.
Escapism.
Will make you do that. So, and yeah. I'm a Rutger Hauer fan anyway. And I saw him in Denny's one time. They filmed a movie here years ago, and there were a few guys in it they're pretty well known, and he was one of them. And I actually saw him at Denny's when they were filming that movie. He was difficult to recognize, though, because he'd grown this big shaggy beard for the role and everything, so he was kind of hard to spot. Somebody had to tell me, they're like, Jack, it's Rutger Hauer up there. Rutger Hauer's at the counter. And he was. Rutger Hauer paying for his pancakes at Denny's. I saw it here in my hometown. So
I'm seeing a few clips from Blind Fury, and yeah, you're absolutely right. It was not going to be an Academy Award winner by any means. Rutger Hauer, He has had a very interesting discography.
He's been in some good flicks. I mean, you can't knock Rutger too much. Some of his movies, they're all kind of B movies, most of them, but they're pretty good. So
I will say the IMDb rating is 6.3 out of 10. That's not bad. I've actually watched movies that had a worse rating than that, and they were bad.
I guarantee you this, it's better than the new Roadhouse movie that you watched.
I wonder what the IMDb rating of that is. We'll leave that to our listeners to contemplate or research themselves. Well, are we about out of time, Mr. Jack?
I suppose so. Are you finally just about finished with that Triumph Spitfire-sized croissant there? Or like what?
Oh, I think I finished it a long time ago. I'm eating up the bits as we speak.
The crumbs.
You always have those little flakes that are left over at the end.
I like to sweep those on the floor for any stray mice or birds that may come through. I think that's nice. We share.
You're always thinking of the little critters, aren't you?
Oh, I love the critters.
Is this from the Blind Fury soundtrack?
Yeah, how'd you guess?
This is mystical. What is this?
Oh, it's just a little intro for another one of my 80s unknown hair bands. It's called Dreams. It's a band called Strut, with 2 T's at the end, as should be the case.
All right, you take care of yourself, Mr. Jack Hansen.
Same to you, Mr. Michael. Look after those dreams. We'll talk about them again soon.
Until next time.
Well, it looks like Jack and Michael have finished up their latest chat about all things existence. But if anything they said got your own existence brewing, be sure and catch their other talks at existencebrewing.com and drop them an email to share your thoughts using contact@existencebrewing.com.
Existence Brewing.